Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root, from CardsWire.com, USA Today's NFL Wire site that covers Arizona Cardinals as we have episode 717, or maybe 716, just depends on which order I release the episodes, because I recorded the opponent preview this afternoon. We're recording on a Thursday night with Cole Musgrove. So I've got Seth Cox, my co-host, with me from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site, to do our Cardinals Seahawks Week 10 preview picks and predictions. But I was on a podcast recording binge today, and then I'm going to be a guest on Cole's podcast, and then Seth and I are just discussing the joys of having older children. Mine are all adults, and Seth's are reaching there. So, and they like to do their own thing.
They do.
They can't just do things the way we know is will bring the most success. But kids are built different now,
and that's putting it mildly.
Yeah, but the Cardinals are now built differently. The Cardinals went to officially not only is Jacoby Brissett the starter this week, they put Kyler Murray on the shelf. They put him on injured reserve, forcing him to get healthy. However you want to read into that, Jacoby Brissett will be the starter at least for the next 4 weeks. Kyler will miss at least the next 4 weeks, and goodness, it does, like, this, the off season will be a lot of talk, but doesn't it feel like that they're quietly putting Kyler Murray away so that it's not a problem if Jacoby struggles at all?
Yeah, it just feels like that's the whole idea behind it. And it's an interesting thing, and buddy of ours, but text me, and his thought process and his response was, can't they just be normal? Like, can this franchise?
No, they can't.
I know they can't get out of their own way. They can't do anything normal or anything of that nature. It's always just, they've always got to make everything a production and a show, and then they wonder why, for the entire time in Arizona, but even recently, they're not highly thought of, and then things like this happen, and I think for the most part, most people are looking at it and going, oh yeah, it makes sense, go with Jacoby, he's the hot hand. I had one person from the league text me today, and his thoughts were really interesting, because let me read them to you here. Where did it go? Sorry. He's, again, NFL guy said, people ignoring the monumental change in play calling, in alignment, and use of play action as the main catalyst for the performance improvement. And you look at it, and it's something you and I have talked about, right? And people will just say, oh, you're being an apologist, or you're this or that. And it's like, no, like it's an actual thing that, like, real NFL people are going, oh, like, don't get me wrong, it's not like there's nothing against Brissett in that, right? Like, there's no negative about Brissett. It's just like, why wasn't this how you were calling the offense the whole time. Like where was this play selection? Where was, being this aggressive downfield? Like where were those calls at? And that's something you and I have said for the last couple of weeks. And the biggest concern now with the whole situation is obviously the fact that there is a legitimate concern if Jacoby goes down with the amount of hits he's taking every single week, that it's just not a sustainable model, right? And that's something that we've talked about with this offense in general, that the days of the quarterback that can stand back there and take this kind of pounding, that can live in the pocket and live to take, again, think about it. This is game 3, from Jacoby, and he's averaging being hit 16 times a game. 16. That's sacks and quarterback hits. That's 272 hits over the course of a season.
It's not surviving that. Like it's like he's a bigger, tougher guy. Like you like his toughness,
right? You love it,
but it's not sustainable. And then as we talk about, because this is where we're going to preview the Seahawks, you look at the other side. You look at the opponent. Jacoby's been sacked 13 times in the last 3 games. Sam Darnold has been sacked 9 times the entire season.
Well, and when people were very vocal that, Kyler's the issue with the offensive line, I'm like, am I watching the same thing? Like, sometimes I feel like, I'm taking crazy pills, and I'm like, and I get it. There's a percentage of fans that don't know a whole lot about the game, and there's nothing wrong with that. That being a fan is just that, it's learning and things of that nature. But it's almost like there was this like concerted effort to be like, you see, like if they have a quarterback that'll just step up in the pocket, all this goes away. And now you're looking at it and you're going, okay, the offense is playing, at a good level, not, it's not a world beater level. It's at a decent level. And that's the conversation, is like, man, how sustainable is this model? I was talking to somebody else today, and the conversation was like, well, all you got to do is get a Josh Allen and you'll be fine. Right. And like, and that's kind of what the funny part is it's like, people look at it and go, well, yeah, you need the Josh Allen archetype. It's like, well, there's one Josh Allen archetype. Like, there's not other players that do what Josh Allen does. And so how do you get that archetype? Like, how do you get a player of that nature and make sure that he stays healthy for a full season and in a career and things of that nature? And so, that's the interesting portion of it over the next, they're in game 8. They're basically midway through the season, 9 games, right? Like, how does that play out? And it starts this week, like you said, because they're going up against a team that is incredibly successful in terms of defense. They're 5th in points against. They're 11th in yards against. They are not great against the pass. They're good against the pass. They're not great against the pass, but they do have the 3rd most interceptions in the NFL. But they are unbelievable against the run. 2nd on the season in yards per game, 1st on the season in yards per attempt against the run. And they're coming off a game where they had literally their worst rushing defensive game of the season, and ho-hum, they won 38-14.
Yeah.
in a very non-competitive game.
And yes, and then you look at and I said this with Cole on the other show. We all wondered why the Seahawks made the move from Geno Smith to Sam Darnold. And we thought that at best, this was a lateral move for somebody who's younger. But boy, on both ends of those decisions to trade Geno Smith and then sign Sam Darnold, that's worked out wonderfully on both ends because Geno has been far from impressive this year. Granted, he's on a garbage Raiders team. And Sam Darnold has only, as good as he was last year, he's even better this year, which is incredible. He is incredible in 2024, in 2025. He leads the NFL in yards per attempt at 9.6. He's only been sacked 9 times. He's only been hit. Here's the thing. Jacoby Brissett's been hit 35 times in 3 games. Sam Darnold's been hit 18 times all season. And
that's a single game for Jacoby.
Oh my gosh, nearly. Nearly. And this was a team whose offensive line was believed to be the worst in the division.
And among the worst in the NFL.
Right. And Sam Darnold is playing Sam Darnold is playing at the level right now that we all expected from Sam Darnold when he came into the league. It just took him bouncing around long enough to do it. And he's he's completing 70% of his passes. He's got 16 touchdowns. He only has 5 interceptions in 8 games. The yards per attempt leads the NFL. The yards per catch leads the NFL. He has the NFL's number 1 receiver in terms of yardage. He's being protected. He's not turning the ball over. This is franchise quarterback play, and they got him on a great deal. And they look like this Seahawks team looks like a Super Bowl contender right now.
And it's very Carson Palmer-esque, right? Like what he's doing. You look at it, you mentioned it, numbers wise, he's number 4 in passing yards, number 5 in passing touchdowns. But he's thrown the 10th most interceptions in the NFL. So he's one of those guys, right? That despite having a great completion percentage, it's those vertical throws, right? Like that's what the problem is. But you look at it and it's very, again, it reminds me of Palmer with the Cardinals. You've got games where it's 4 touchdowns to 1 interception and you're like, who cares, right? It's 1 interception. Because now it's almost like, if you throw an interception, it's like, oh, it's a bad thing. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, definitely it's not great to throw an interception, but there's also, places in time where it doesn't kill you, right? Like we're being aggressive in certain spots is not a negative. And so what Darnold's done this year, and since we last chatted about him before the game, I mean, you look at his game log this year, right? It's he had a very not mediocre but very kind of ho-hum type of game against the Cardinals, right? 18 for 26, 242 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions. Ran the ball 3 times for 13 yards. Ran the ball 1 time for 24 yards. Like he was sacked the most times he's been sacked all year. 3 for 13. And we all know what happened at the end of the game and the reality of how it all went down and things of that nature. But now you look at it and since that game, they lost to Tampa in a shootout, and he threw for 341 yards and 4 touchdowns. since the Cardinals game, he's thrown for 11 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Because again, he doesn't care. Like, he's going to push the ball down the field. He's thrown for almost 1,200 yards in those games. And here's the crazy thing, Jess. We talked about kind of the Jacoby effect on the offense and how much more they're throwing the ball. The most he threw the ball was in that loss to Tampa. And obviously that was his most yards too, but the most he threw the ball was in that loss to Tampa. 34 passing attempts in that game. 34. So the offense that he's kind of wielding is kind of what you and I had hoped or expected it to look like with Kyler Murray, right? Like a lot of running, a lot of play action, a lot of ability to push the ball to different levels. Now we've seen that with Jacoby, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception in his 3 games. Just over 800 yards passing in those games. Like, he's having a lot of success. But you look at it, 44 attempts, 36 attempts. The last game, 31 attempts was more the Sam Darnold type, right? But the way Darnold's doing it is just so low profile and kind of low key, right? Something you just don't see very often. I mean, you look at overall the leaders this year in terms of passing and things of that nature, right? And he's up there. We talked about it. He's 7th overall in passing yardage. Jess, he's 24th in passing attempts. You look at the guys at the top, right? Daniel Jones throwing the ball 293 times. Then the next 3 guys have all thrown the ball over 300 times. Then you've got Drake May at 255, Matthew Stafford at 274. Sam Darnold's at 216. 216. And so that's the thing with this, is that it's just what he's done this year has been really impressive, just in terms of a high success rate. Like you said, that yards per attempt, the net yards per attempt, the yards per catch is first, in the NFL. His quarterback ratings, 3rd in the NFL. It's just, and like you said, the big one, like maybe the biggest one is that sack number, right? And quarterbacks that play, we're not going to go off of non-starters, but it's Darnold and Bo Nix. That's it. I mean, and when we came into this year, you mentioned it. Everybody goes, "Oh yeah, Broncos have a great offensive line." Nobody was saying that about
Nobody.
the Seahawks.
Nobody. We were all saying, well, good luck, Sam Darnold. You lose your weapons, you lose your offensive line. Oh, the offensive line is great. Oh, Jackson Smith and Jigma is the best receiver in football right now. And here's the thing about Jackson Smith and Jigma, who leads the NFL in yards, is that while he's got 58 catches, it's not like they're spamming him with, like, he's got 948 yards while averaging over 16 yards a catch. His year, like, the Cardinals held him to his worst game in week 4, and he still managed to have a 36-yard catch. And he had no receiving yards in the first half of that game. He ended up with 79 in the second half, and the 36-yarder that was the backbreaker that set up their game-winning field goal. But he hasn't had, like, he hasn't hit 10 catches in a game, but he's had exactly 8 catches and over 120 yards for 4 straight weeks. He's the Ohio State receivers, he has been of those guys, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison, Jackson Smith-Njigba is that guy. He is the alpha, and we wondered if he could handle being the number one in Seattle. He's that guy. He's great. He's getting open, and Sam Darnold's getting him the ball, and he's able to get yards after the catch, which is even better. And so this is an offense that's going to be very hard for the Cardinals to defend. One, and two, you go on the other side of the ball defensively. They do so many things well, and the Cardinals will already be one-dimensional because this is an elite run-stopping squad that is going against a Cardinals team that ran the ball well against Dallas. But when your running backs are Amari DeMercado and Bam Knight, that's not a rushing attack that people are going to fear. And so, it's different if you've got James Conner and Trey Benson as your runners. And so but you can't count on DeMercado and Knight to produce at a high level. Maybe they'll be effective enough, but they're going to struggle against this rush defense. And it's a defensive line that is a problem, because we saw what Leonard Williams did last year. Byron Murphy II, their second-year defensive tackle, looks like a stud this year. He's got 5 sacks so far this year, coming from the interior. And Uchenna Nwosu has 5.5 sacks, a guy that's been more or less kind of a journeyman as a solid but not great player, is getting sack production. This defensive line is significantly better. They just haven't been as great about stopping the pass, even though they do take the ball away quite well. Ernest Jones, 3 interceptions. One of those came against the Cardinals. You got Kobe Bryant with a pair of picks. Darren Kendrick. They've intercepted 9 passes this year in their 8 games, and they have and they get their hands on the ball. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different players have at least 4 pass breakups. So
yeah, it's like the complete opposite of playing against the Cowboys, right?
Oh, yeah, the Cowboys who don't cover well, don't get their hands on balls, and don't tackle well.
Right. Well, and you mentioned it, but Ernest Jones is playing at like and again, this is definitely hyperbole, so like don't think I'm like crazy, but he's playing at like a Bobby Wagner level, right? Like it's crazy to see how well he's playing. You talked about the journeyman situation. I know that's not who we're mentioning, but like it's crazy that dude is having that much success. And he had that success with the Rams, and the Rams were like, "No, we're good, man. Like, get out of here."
Yeah, the Ernest Jones path to the Seahawks was strange because he was super productive for the Rams, and the Rams are like, okay, we'll trade to the Titans, even though they didn't really have linebackers to like replace him. And the Titans were like, nah. And then when he goes to Seattle, they go from being a terrible run defending team to immediately one of the best, and that has continued this season. So
yeah. And it goes back to the conversations. You and I have discussed this 1,000 times, and not to make this too Cardinal centric, like I always find a way to do, but you look at it, Darren Kendrick, their second, third. Oh no, sorry, Ernest Jones. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong one. Drake Thomas. Sorry. Drake Thomas, their third leading tackler on the season, was a undrafted free agent. Tyrese Knight, their second leading tackler on the season, was a 4th-round pick last year. And then obviously Jones, and again, you mentioned it. He was a 3rd-round pick by the Rams, and ends up in Tennessee. Doesn't work in Tennessee, so they trade him to Seattle, and like rejuvenates his career. And he was a freak. I mean, nobody questioned the abilities with Los Angeles, but he's just helped turn that defense into something special. And it goes back to the old conversation about, investing in off the ball linebackers. Like, one of the best defenses in the NFL, basically spent money on you and me at the linebacker position, and they're reaping and those guys are 26, 25, and 25. Like, they're young. And you look at their defense as a whole, right? And outside of Leonard Williams, and obviously DeMarcus Lawrence, who's ancient, but outside of Leonard Williams, their production is just from young, hungry, athletic, talented dudes. And I think, you just look at what this team is, and a lot of Cardinals fans were like, oh, the Cardinals will be better than them. Mike Macdonald, you mentioned Sam Darnold. Mike Macdonald is really everything the Cardinals fans had hoped Jonathan Gannon would be, right?
Yeah. Yep. That's pretty much it. The defensive coordinator from a great other team. He's done exactly what we wanted Gannon to do. And
by the way,
honestly, the Seahawks have Gannon's number because they are 0 for 5 against Seattle since Gannon took over.
Well, and by the way, think about this, Jess, too. It's not like he walked into an easy situation. He walked in to taking over for a legendary, beloved coach. And just, and all he did was coming off a 9-8 season. It wasn't like the Seahawks were, 3-14, coming off a 9-8 season. And all he does is goes and wins 10 games the first year and just misses the playoffs, right? And then this year they're 6-2, tied for first in the NFC West, have the 5th best scoring offense and 5th best scoring defense in football. And they look like, before the injury, obviously, they literally just made the Commanders and Jaden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury look foolish. Just like they had no idea what to do or how to play. And that is, a testament to what Macdonald brought to this organization and what they've been able to do with their GM. And, that'll be the thing to watch over the next couple of years, because they're just, one of the big questions we have is, who's the guy that's going to put them the Cardinals, this is, in a position to compete with this team?
Well, coming up next on the Res of C Red podcast, special our Cardinals talk on the web. Let's talk about the game specifically, matchups that we're looking for, keys for the Cardinals to maybe win this game. That's coming up next on Res of C Red. We're back on the Rise of C Red podcast, special our Cardinals talk on the web. Talking Cardinals Seahawks now, matchups, keys. What are we looking forward to? And I think the Cardinals, I guess, number one, they have to play from ahead. They did that successfully. They did that successfully last week. Honestly, that's been the thing that's been good the most about having Jacoby Brissett, is that as the backup, and when Colt McCoy was in that situation, they did well too. He hasn't fallen behind. They've led early and they faded twice. And then against Dallas, even though they started fading, it didn't matter. And so it continues to need to be the case where they need to avoid being behind. And if there's one team that has given the Cardinals fits in that sense, Seattle's the one that keeps the Cardinals from starting well. And that usually and that often spirals into 19-9 type games.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing with this game. And like you said, to have a chance this game, there's really two things, and it's tough to explain, but it's something that you and I kind of understand. And it's that you have to be able to control that rushing attack by the Seahawks. You mentioned it; they're only 22nd in yards, they're 31st in yards per attempt. As good as they are throwing the football and keeping Sam Darnold protected, they're that bad running the ball, right? But here's the deal, man. They don't care. They just don't care. They have the 8th most rushing attempts in the NFL. And their running game averages 3.7 yards per carry, Jess. And so you mentioned it, tight games. If you can get it to a tight game, they can make mistakes. We saw it against San Francisco. Hell, we saw it against the Cardinals. The Cardinals just out mistake them in the end, right? We saw it against Tampa Bay. Something that went along with those games, turnovers. Again, you look at those games and what happens. You get games where, Sam Darnold played extremely well, but he turned the ball over. He had a fumble loss in that game. Jackson Smith and Jigba had a fumble loss in the first game of the season, and their loss to the 49ers. Against Tampa Bay, again, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. I don't think anybody would complain about that. But then you had a Jalen Milroe who came in and had one play and fumbled on a single play. 2 turnovers in both their losses. So how do you beat them? Well, force 2 turnovers is definitely one of the best ways to go about it, right? But force them to have to throw the ball. And I know that sounds counterintuitive because they're so good at it, but again, just look at the numbers. They want to run the ball. They're not good at it, but they want to. They're 8th in rushing attempts. They're 30th in passing attempts. They don't care about balance or anything like that. They want to pound the rock, man. That's their thing. And you have to take advantage of their turnovers. It's almost odd, Jess, that this team is 6-2. Because as good as they are at forcing turnovers, they're minus 3 on the season in the turnover battle. You look at it against Tampa Bay, they lost that game, right? Turned the ball over twice, no turnovers against by the Bucks. In their win against the Texans, they turned the ball over 4 times. They only forced 1 turnover. Like, their ability to shoot themselves in the foot and get out of it is actually kind of crazy. And so that's something that we have to watch, because the other thing is it may not matter this week if Will Johnson can't go.
Yeah, I'm very worried about that. And add to that, they just added Rashid Shaheed to that group. When I saw the trade, it made me swear. I'm like, of all the I'm thinking Quinnen Williams to the Cowboys, cool, whatever. Sauce Gardner to the Colts, okay. Rashid Shaheed and that speed to Seattle, that, and then this week, and the fact that there's not going to be much of a learning curve because he played in Clinton Kubiak's offense last year. So you now have Jackson Smith and Jigma, who's just been unstoppable, and you add elite speed on the other side and Cooper Kupp on top of that. That is that is going to be tough. And to do that when it doesn't look like Max Melton's going to be back from the concussion because he didn't practice on Thursday, which means, yeah, I don't think there's a way for like he needed to be he needed at least to be limited on Thursday to be able to be on track to be able to play on Sunday. And so it looks like they're going to be without Max. They're probably going to be without Will. And so you've got that group of receivers, and it's going to be Garrett Williams and then the other guys, Keitrell Clark and Denzel Burke. So
the pass rusher is going to have to, do their thing again. They're going to have to do a good job with that. And again, you want to force them, as unsuccessful as they are, you want to force them to have to drop back more so you can get after Sam Darnold, so you can create turnovers.
Now, the other matchup that, because he has been a Cardinals killer, is Leonard Williams. The last 3 games that he's played against the Cardinals, they have been without Will Hernandez. And while the metrics say that Will Hernandez is playing poorly, even worse than Isaiah Adams was, the eye test shows that the offense looks so much better when he's in the lineup. And we've been talking about this fact that, we got almost a half of that offensive line with Will Hernandez, with Kyler Murray. And what did they do? They scored 3 touchdowns in 4 possessions against Tennessee. When he came out, they didn't score again. And then he's been back in the lineup those last 3 games. What have they done? Scored 27, 23, and 27 points offensively. While the metrics look bad, clearly I still want, I've got my eyes on Will Hernandez versus Leonard Williams. Now, granted, they've got Byron Murphy to worry about too, and Jaron Reed. So they've got a very good defensive line overall. But the game-wrecking nature that Leonard Williams have been on against the Cardinals, maybe. And well, one thing that we do know is the fact that Hernandez he's got the size. He's a bigger lineman than Isaiah Adams or Tristan Colon. So maybe that in and of itself is enough. But that's one of the matchups I'm paying attention to.
Oh, 100%. And you mentioned the corners and the situation there and how they're going to be able to deal with that, right? So one of the other things that you have to look at in this game is, can they control Kenneth Walker? So, against the Cardinals, again, he didn't have a great game by any means, but he finished with 110 yards from scrimmage on 20 touches, so over 5 yards per touch. Jess, that was his 3rd best game of the year. And that's, kind of what the issue becomes with the Cardinals is they do a good enough job, but they don't do a great job on teams. And then, the other one, obviously, Zach Charbonnet, they bottled him up, 14 touches for 44 yards, 3 yards per touch. One of his worst games of the year.
But Charbonnet's been interesting because he's only averaged 2.9.
Yeah.
But they also give him all the goal line situations.
They do. And so that's the thing. So you look at it and how do they control those guys? Are they going to be able to really, bear down in the red zone where they like to try to get those guys involved? Because this run defense looked really good. What's the status on Mac? Do we know yet?
He didn't practice 2 days in a row, so
probably
who knows?
Yeah. And so that's the hard part, man. You've got you're gonna. It's almost like one of those games, and obviously you never want to lose in the NFL, and you never feel bad about winning in the NFL. But like that Cowboys game was like almost one of those games where it's like you won the battle, but maybe lost the war. And obviously, if they come out and play well and beat Seattle, which we both are hopeful that they can do, you look at it from that perspective, and it's like, hey, who cares? But I text you guys literally after the last play happened. I'm like, man, I hope Will Johnson didn't get hurt on that meaningless play.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. You want those guys to care like that. You want those guys to go out there and make plays on the ball like that. That's what you want, especially from your young, hungry leaders. But like the way he got leg whipped by his, friendly fire, it was like, oh crap. Like, really? Again, man? Like, come on. And it's not Will's fault by any means. It's one of those things that you look at and you just go, come on, can this guy not catch a break? And so, the overall thought process is just that, can this group, if they are as banged up going into the game as they appear to be, get enough consistent plays and stops to win the game? And for all the huffing and puffing about the last one, this offense gave the defense and special teams a chance at the end, and they blew it. So now you go, okay, well, how's this one going to look? What's this one going to look like? And can they do enough to win this game? That's the genuine question with this, because it's just such a tough matchup with the injury situation and what they're going through right now.
I will be interested as well in how Marv plays, because it was against Seattle where it was, oh my gosh, he's a bust, to, oh, he broke out. So whoever is tasked with covering him, especially the first half he had against Dallas, like, can we get a full game from him? Is it going to be, we talk about the targets. He got targeted 8 times in the first half. He'd only been targeted a total of 8 games by Jacoby in the previous 2 games. And so that is one other matchup that I'm looking for. And with that, coming up next on the Res of Sierra podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk on the Web, let's move on to it's your favorite part of the show, everyone. The picks, the predictions, and the prop bets. It's coming next on Res of Sierra. We're back on the Res of Sierra podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk on the Web, talking Cardinals Seahawks, Week 10 in Seattle. We're going to make our predictions. We're going to talk prop bets. And, I got a chance to look over some of those earlier as I was talking about, as you will hear some of the conversation that I had with Cole Musgrove on the other episode from the week. So Seth, how do you see this game going?
This is a tough one, man. You look at it, obviously it's on the road. It's interesting that Seattle's kind of been worse at home this year, right? Like, so, both their losses are at home, which is unusual, right? 12th man crap and all that stuff. But the way that they've kind of played the last 3 weeks, over 300 yards of offense in every game, under 300 yards of offense in every game for their opponents. It looks like they're hitting their stride at the right time. You go back to that first Cardinals game, they're coming off a 44-13 beatdown of the New Orleans Saints, but it wasn't as impressive as that number was. They only had 320 yards of offense to 284 for the Saints. In this game against Washington, right? And again, this was with a healthy returned Jaden Daniels until the end. They put up 418 yards of offense and held that Commanders team to 290 yards of offense. Like, their defense, Jaden Daniels had 133, net passing yards in the game. Is Jacoby Brissett a better thrower of the football than Jay Daniels? Yes, I think so. That being said, 6.5 on the road, it just feels like the type of game that's going to be really tough for the Arizona Cardinals to win.
It feels like a kryptonite game for Brissett for a number of reasons, and the spread. It happened this afternoon. On BetMGM, it's all the way. They added on a half point, so it's now a 7-point spread for Seattle. And in terms of who's going to win, 93% of the handle is backing the Seahawks. Not that there's much value for that, but the interesting one for me is that 78% have the over 45. And if there's anything that we've noticed about Cardinals Seahawks game, especially in Seattle, they often are trudgy, sloshy, low scoring games. And considering this is a Seahawks team that allows less than 19 points a game, that seems like I don't know why everyone is so gung ho about the over.
I think it's because they think the Seahawks are going to put up points, man. I really do. We covered it. If the Cardinals are at full health in the secondary, 44.5 seems like a good number, right? A 27, 17, 24, 20 type of game, right? Like right in that range. But if Max Melton and Will Johnson on top of, obviously like you mentioned, Mac Jones, Keitrell Clark is limited. He'll probably end up having to play, but Keitrell Clark is limited. Buddha was added to the list this week with a hamstring. And I get it. They're banged up too, right? They've got some. Josh Jobe is in concussion protocol. He's played extremely well for them this year. Cooper Kupp. I know it might not sound like a lot, but he's been their best blocking wide receiver, and he does a great job with that. It really helps in the run game. Two of their tight ends are banged up. Arroyo was full today, but AJ Barner's banged up. And then Ernest Jones was limited. I don't think it matters with him. I think he's a psychopath and he's going to play. And I mean that as a compliment. But
yes.
You look at it I think the Sharps are going, dude. If Will, Max, and Mac are healthy, yeah, I think 44.5 is a good line. I think without it, it's a tough line. I think, like you said, that it's sloggy whenever they play Seattle. It's ugly. There's not a lot of fun things to enjoy about watching these games. Let's be completely honest. It's supposed to be, 60, no rain, just 60. So it's good conditions for a bad night for the Cardinals or bad afternoon for the Cardinals. And I don't think that they're going to get, blown out by any means, but I think this is one of those ones where you see it 34-20.
That's kind of how I see it going, but I think the Cardinals are going to struggle more offensively. So I think it's going to be 31-13. And then suddenly Jacoby's not nearly so magic, but mostly it'll be Seattle just having its way offensively with the Cardinals defense.
Well, and that's the thing too, right? Jess, if the Cardinals can't run the ball, and by the way, they don't run the ball well outside of that Dallas game anyways, and now you're facing one of the best, if not the best, rush defenses in the NFL. And so now you're asking Jacoby to throw the ball. They get after the quarterback at extremely great rate. They force a lot of turnover. It's just like you said, it's kind of a recipe for disaster in this game. But we also were not overly excited to see the offense play against, or sorry, the defense play against the Dallas offense. We were excited about the offense to play against the Dallas defense, but and we were wrong. I mean, they did a good enough job. They got some help from the Cowboys, as we know, and they had a good enough game, man. Where this week maybe they surprise us again, right? Like maybe they come out, play well enough, surprise us again. But
how many times are they going to do that?
Well, and honestly, again, it's my concern. This game is the defense. Like, I don't, and I think if the defense is getting bludgeoned in this one, it becomes really hard for the offense to keep pace.
Yeah, I believe that. So you've got them. What you said? 34-20. I've got 31-13. Let's look.
So you're just. I mean, so to just do not play the under. Like if we're within 2 points, don't play it. Like
just leave that alone. Leave it alone. But yeah, but lots of people are the BetMGM, at least based on the number of bets that went backing the Cowboys, they made a lot of money. They made a lot of money on Monday night. Props for this game. So these like, let's look at the receiving props. I think the first thing we want to do is look at Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's got the line of 7.5. He's had 8 catches in 4 straight games and 8 or more in 6 of 8. But the projected total for him is 7.5. You get plus odds on that. But the Cardinals held him to the 4 catches. And with the addition of Shaheed, he might not get as many targets. And so I don't love that one as much. The prop I like 2 of them is Shaheed over 3.5 catches for plus 125, and then Marvin over 4.5 plus 115. If last week, if Monday's game was if we can take anything from that, maybe they're going to make a concerted effort once again to get him the ball, and to be able to, at 5 catches to get plus odds. I like that. Also, both Zay Jones didn't do anything, but Elijah Higgins again at 1.5 catches, over 1.5 catches is plus 145. And so I like that one because all it takes is 2 catches and you got great value.
Yeah, the receiving props in this one are probably the way to go. By the way, we've been doing this a while. Can you remember the last time a Cardinals receiver or opponent was 94.5 for their over-under on receiving yards? Like, that is just such a wild number, and for good reason, right? Like, he's been playing insane ball this year.
He's had over 120 yards in 4 straight games. So, but yeah, that is a high number.
Sure. Two things I like: Rashid Shaheed, 30+ yard reception, plus 240 on FanDuel. Michael Wilson, 30+ yard reception, plus 320 on FanDuel as well. Those are 2 passing ones that I like on top of the things that Jess has already talked about. Interesting, Jess. Jacoby Brissett, the lowest interception percentage ever for a starter. Minus 118 to throw an interception in this game. Sam Darnold, who has been good, not great, taking care of the ball this year, plus 108 to throw an interception in this game. And I don't necessarily think that they're wrong. I'm not expecting Jacoby to go bonkers the other way and throw 4 picks, right? But I do think this is a game with how many hits he's taken, the way the game could be unfolding, that you see an interception in this one. So I would take that. The passing touchdowns, over 2 passing touchdowns for Jacoby, I would also take. It's over 1.5 plus 134. I like that number. Like I said, I think they get 2 to 3 touchdowns in this game. So,
and for me, I'm saying that they're going to struggle, so I am staying far clear of that. Although I do like Chad Ryland's even money plus 100 to go over 1.5 field goals for that, and then therefore, if they score the 13 points like I predict is my prediction, then also over 6.5 kicking points at even money plus 100 for Ryland also makes a little sense. Now for my 31, for I over 2.5 extra points. Well, if I've got him scoring 31, that's probably 4 touchdowns, so I'm going to avoid that. The rushing props are interesting because let me find the rushing yards. I was looking at attempts. These feel hard to bet to me. 51.5 for Ken Walker, 43.5 for Charbonnet, 33.5 for DeMercado, 32.5 for Bam Knight. Jacoby Brissett over 13.5. That one is tempting. Although Sam Darnold over 4.5, I think that one it's not plus odds. It's only minus 120, but that would be an easy one to make, I think.
yeah. And you look at the scoring props in general, this is a tough week. You and I both think that 4 touchdowns is probably where the Seahawks will be. And you have them at like 1, maybe 2, and I have them at 2, maybe 3 for the Cardinals. And so, the chalky plays of Jackson Smith and Jigba, Zach Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker for the Seahawks, those don't really, I don't think the value is good. McBride for the Cardinals a plus 150, Harrison plus 180. Again, not great value. So the two kind of, I don't want to say long shots because they're not long shots by any means, but the two I'm interested in. Rashid Shaheed, going back to Rashid, plus 210 as a anytime touchdown scorer, but just plus 1,100 as the first touchdown scorer. Can you imagine that they're trying to get him involved early? And then
that'd be fun.
And then Jacoby plus 600 anytime touchdown score. I know he's only scored 1 rushing touchdown in the last 4 years. I get it. However, get that big body moving, right? If they get down in that area again, plus 600 on that one. So those two are really interesting to me from an anytime touchdown, and then maybe a sprinkle on Shaheed at first touchdown score.
Sounds good. Anything else of note that you like?
No, man, I hate that this sounds so doom and gloom after what was obviously, a really impressive win on Monday night. But this is one of those games that you just look at and you just don't find or don't love the path that it's going to take to get there, right? And you wonder where the stops are going to come from for this team, and that's the question I think both of us have more than anything else, right? Like, this isn't a negative; it's just kind of a realistic thing of like, where do the stops come from for this group?
Yeah, that's going to be a rough one. And with that, we will wrap up this edition of the Rise of Sea podcast, Best Our Cardinals Talk on the web. Cardinals play Sunday afternoon, 2:05 p.m. Arizona time, 4:05 Eastern. We get to see if the Jacoby magic keeps going, if the vibes will continue to be positive, or if it's simply, maybe it's simply, even if a blowout, people are still happy just because it's not Kyler and people are done. Who knows? Until then, we'll be back next week to talk more Cardinals football as we see what happens in the aftermath against the Seahawks. That's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Ruth. Thanks for listening. As always, we'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, See Red, and of course, Rise Up, See Red.